Hey guys, welcome to the Adventure Photo Show. My name is Steve Reichert, and this channel is all about encouraging you to get outside with the camera and tell your story. Or is it? One of the things I want to talk about a little bit tonight is something I've been thinking about for the last couple of weeks, months maybe, and that is what to do when you kind of reach a point where your interests start to change, your focus starts to change on a personal level, and it's hard to keep that from bleeding through into the impact on your content that you're making on YouTube. Now, as with most of the videos that I make, a lot of this is trial and error on my part where I have something that I'm thinking about and I want to kind of work through it a little bit here with you guys and kind of get some feedback. I'd be interested to hear comments and ideas from those of you who are subscribers who watch, and for those of you who aren't subscribers, love to hear about similar challenges and such that you guys are facing. Basically, the way that my channel started out, it started out sort of filmmaking stuff and stories that I was telling based on my life, and that was primarily, when I started the channel, primarily around traveling and climbing. And the problem is that climbing and traveling can be really difficult things to document well enough to make it work in terms of a YouTube channel. And so that's something that I kind of went away from a little bit. I ventured into doing some gear reviews, and when I started talking a little bit more about the technical components of photography and filmmaking, and specifically the gear, well, I mean, I know how much everybody loves. Sorry, just monkeying with the lights a little bit. You know how much everybody loves gear reviews and whatnot, and that's kind of where my growth in this channel really started to happen. And it was nice because in the process of doing more searchable content, things that were related to specific cameras, talking about them, and in the context of adventure and outdoor photography, I gained more of an audience for the non-gear related and technical side of my work. But now I've kind of reached a point where I've done a variety of gear reviews. I've done a variety of back and forth between cameras, and I've really reached a happy medium where I have a camera that I'm happy with, that works for me, that gives me the balance of the things that I need. And I'm kind of over reviewing cameras. So now the question comes to me, okay, well, I'm done reviewing cameras. Well, now what am I going to do? And on a personal level right now, my interests are shifting a little bit. And my interests are shifting, not to say that I'm less interested in photography. If anything, I'm more interested in photography than ever. But I am less interested in a discussion of photography from a technical standpoint and more interested in actually going out and photographing things. Because for me, photography has always been a extension to the things that I'm interested in. And like I mentioned earlier, traveling and climbing used to be the things that I did the most of, and certainly that's changed. Now, doing things with my daughter, specifically outdoor stuff and like fishing and hiking, and those are the things that really have been impacting my life, or where I've been spending most of my time. And so kind of been thinking about moving my channel a little bit more, or moving my effort, I should say, and trying to determine whether it makes sense to keep the channel as it stands or to move it. And good evening to King Yuzi and who is that? El Sundev as well. Gentlemen, good to see you all here. Thanks everybody who's tuning in. I will kind of go back and forth with the comments in a little bit. I'm just kind of getting some thoughts out there first, and then I'll kind of chat with you guys that are signing in here. So yeah, one of the reasons why I know that it's a little frustrating when you develop a subscribership and then you change your channel around and you start doing things differently. And there's an extent to which I'm hesitant to change the channel into something different. And I say something different, but part of the reason why I'm considering doing that is because really the whole intent of this channel, of Living Vertical from the get-go, is really to focus on promoting the value of good, clean fun in the outdoors, and the therapeutic value and the inherent benefit that that has to everybody. And I kind of ventured away from the initial intent and purpose of the channel, just kind of by accident when people started responding to some discussions I happened to have about certain cameras, and then it just kind of, I deviated a little bit and it went off the rabbit trail there. And so really, if I were to shift the focus of Living Vertical to outdoor content again, and really just again promoting the value of good clean fun in the outdoors, and what that means and has meant in my life, and what I'm seeing that mean as I'm watching my daughter develop, in a lot of ways, to me, that seems much more like going back to the original intent than deviation from it. However, when you have a handful of people that have subscribed looking for something or expecting something that's a little bit different than that, it can seem like a little bit of a bait and switch. So that's something that I've been struggling with and struggling about. And, the alternative, of course, would be to start a new channel, and I do have another channel that I started. I haven't put any content on it there. I'm going to link it below, and some of you have subscribed to that already. It's called Adventure RX. It doesn't have a defined URL at this point. It's just kind of the random alphabet soup URL that YouTube gives until you reach, enough subscribers to where they actually think you're worth being designated as a specific URL. But I'm thinking about kind of shifting my focus away from this channel. So it's like, okay, does it make sense to do that? Or maybe I would wind up leaving people behind on this channel who might actually be interested in some of the content that I would make on my other channel. And I would hate to have to do everything a second time. I'd hate to have to do everything twice. Well, that's a great question, King Yuzi. Why limit myself to one type of content? And I really don't want to limit myself to one type of content. The question is, where do I put that content? Because a lot of the content that I've made on here, like I've made some stuff that I think is legitimately credible from a documentary standpoint that, has gotten very, very little visibility because this channel isn't that type of channel, right? It's like the things, or because the metadata maybe is not exactly where it should be, or it's hard to find like that right place, like my documentary about type 1 diabetes, and the cost of insulin. I think that was, it's a short documentary, but it was a pretty well received piece within the community. And so then the question is like, I've spent months working on that, and then I upload it to YouTube and it gets 300 views. Whereas I can sit and do a video just kind of speculating about a new piece of gear, and I put, Fuji XYZ in the title, and my video blows up. And it's like, it's hard to turn down those kind of views, and because they always bring with them subscribers as well. And that's hard to turn down in favor of making work that maybe, you feel a little bit more attached to and that you really believe in, but that is going to be a lot harder to make searchable and to make successful from a volume standpoint. And so that's something that I'm struggling with. Do I want to start something new, or do I want to revert this back to the thing that it was supposed to be originally? And that's a tough question, because when you run out of gear review stuff to do, there's where do you go from there? So my daughter was up this weekend, and she came out to visit me. So we spent the week, or the weekend, I should say, tying flies, and that's like the thumbnail. It was the first fly that I've tied in probably the last 15 years. And she helped me with it, and she was really excited about that. And then the next day we went scouting fishing areas and stuff, and it was raining and pretty miserable, but we just hung out and had a really good time, making flies together, fishing lures, and going scouting, and kind of seeing. Yeah, I've tried just adding Fuji to the titles. I've done a little bit of that. It's funny. I've seen that. It's been interesting too. Hey, Andrew Criswell, good morning, and thank you, Andrew, for the comments that you left on the last video. I think it was the last video, or one of the last videos you left sometime within the last 24 hours, anyways. I've gotten a lot of those types of comments, Andrew, from folks who are, who wanted to see more of my narrative content and wanted to see me do more stuff that was story related and less gear related. And that's kind of the thing that I'm looking, I guess, in a way, looking for permission to do. And I know that that's the wrong way to approach anything. Like if I were talking to somebody who came to me and said, hey, like, I'm trying to figure out what my audience wants, I would probably tell them, well, don't worry about what your audience wants necessarily. Like, just go make the thing that you believe in, and eventually your audience will either get there, or they weren't really your audience to begin with, or what have you. And that's kind of the way I would look at it from a technical perspective. But on a personal level, it's really hard to take that sort of approach because, you know, I've put in a lot of time and effort to build, 7380 or however many subscribers that I have now. To get over that, several thousand mark has been a huge effort for me. And there's an extent to which it's hard to leave that behind and just say, oh yeah, I'm just gonna, kind of start something new and just, scrub all the stuff that I've done here. So, and good evening, Rika. The new channel idea, in a lot of ways, it is a reversion to what this channel really was supposed to be when I started out, which was just, promoting the value of good, clean fun in the outdoors. And, I'm watching this process unfold as my daughter, she's 3.5 now. And this weekend I was telling folks just a little bit ago, we were tying flies together, making fishing lures for those of you who aren't in fly fishing. And of course, since we moved to the Northeast, we're limited in terms of the different things that we're doing. I'm not doing as much climbing because the mountains aren't necessarily as exciting to me out here in this part of the country. I mean, there's still a lot of climbing that can be done, but fishing is something, and hiking are things now that are a lot more accessible. And I'm seeing this process of value in just being outside and learning and exploring in the outdoors. I've been seeing that with her. And it's something that I feel like we need more of out there because there's tons of, just vapid, mindless, stupid things for kids in terms of cartoons and nonsense like that. But like, what if I could make something that really, includes her to some extent in the content, but that also includes my own perspective and all the benefit and the value that I've gotten from being outdoors to encourage, again, good, clean fun, like family, wholesome activity in the outdoors, stuff that's not just like strictly how to, because there's a big component of how to stuff on YouTube for the outdoors. And a lot of that is very, very much focused around, it's usually men who are my age and like older who make videos where they don't even show themselves. They're just kind of talking through a process that they're doing, very, very technical. And I would like to have something that's sort of vloggy, but not like mindless vloggy, something that actually has some, really share some of that value and the passion, the underlying passion of time spent outdoors and, just what that means on a personal level. Because I think socially, one of the things that I see, you know, that is missing, and I say this working as a teacher, and I spend a lot of time around young people and young parents, young, people who are in families, people who are kind of coming out of the childhood phase, and people who are, just out of high school. I spend a lot of time around them as a teacher, and also fellow students. And then also on the other flip side, people who are my age, 30, 35, who have a kid and are looking for some sort of encouragement to go out and to, be a better parent. And what does that mean? Be a better parent, right? Like for me, the idea of having some sort of practical skill that I can teach my daughter that enables her to discover the value and the joy that I have found that has taken me everywhere for the last 15 years. That's a way that I can see something really tangible. That's not like, oh, you're a bad person if you don't do this, but that's like for something that parents are looking for, that they want to give their kids something of greater value. And then also, again, the flip side of looking at the kids that are coming out of high school that haven't had this stuff, and see how these kids go into adulthood lacking a lot of the perspective that can really, really change the way you see the world and the way you see yourself relating to your worldview. And how so much of whatever positive or beneficial awareness that I have of other people, my place in a larger group, and kind of these different things, they've come from the time that I've spent in the outdoors. And a lot of people don't have access to that. And I think it's, something that if I could write a prescription for people to have, it would be take this and just spend the hell a bunch of time outdoors, just go outside. Because when you go outside, you learn to suffer, you learn to sacrifice, you learn what it means to put in effort to get something, and you learn how to have fun doing it. And that's one of the most central things, like one of the key indicators in a child's success. And I'm not a developmental psychologist, nor do I play one on YouTube, nor do I ever want to be one. And I don't even like psychology as a discipline. But there's an interesting test that has a strong correlation between the child's score in the test versus their success as an adult. And it's the marshmallow test. Basically, you put a kid in a room with a marshmallow, you sit them down and say, if you can, not eat this marshmallow, and you just look at it for 15 minutes, you'll get 2 marshmallows. And whether or not they have the ability to kind of defer that gratification and to endure a little discomfort in order to have a larger payoff and to have 2 marshmallows in return at the end of that time frame, that's one of the biggest predictors of success and income, I believe, as they age. And these are lessons that you don't have to learn out of a textbook. These are lessons that I learned. And granted, I kind of might have done away with some of the value of these lessons by spending too much money on cameras at one point, but I've also come around from that, and so we don't have to go down that path exactly. But my point is that there's a lot of just value on a personal level and on a social level from just going outside and spending time in nature. So got a couple of questions back there. I'm going to answer them here. Sorry, I kind of get on a roll and then what have you. Hey, Peter Kent, good to see you here. Thank you for the love and support there on that, Rika and Andrew. I appreciate that a lot. Lewis Hecht asks, how can I do this and devote time and effort, whether it's to this one or to the new one and school? Good question. Something that I'm always thinking about. I think there is definitely a difference in the way that you approach a new YouTube channel based on how you make your videos and the level of production that you put into them and the level of frequency that you put into them. And what I've been doing on this channel is about 1 video every week or so at this point. And my goal is really to keep the channel alive because I can do live streams at a pretty low cost, right? It's not like I'm time-wise low cost, right? I don't have to put in hours and hours of prep, as you can probably tell. For these live streams, it's just like I jump on here and I chat with everybody for an hour or 2, and then that's it. And so that keeps my channel visible in terms of the YouTube algorithm. And I try to do more searchable content. I try to do one of those videos, something that's gonna, get some views. Hopefully, usually one of those every week or so. And when push comes to shove and I have to sacrifice something, like last week I had several tests. So I didn't really get the video release that I wanted. It took me a couple extra days to get that up. And then sometimes I just don't have any videos, so I do the best that I can. And I think that's really what it all boils down to in terms of, putting in the effort. It's time management is what it comes down to, being able to say, okay, like this is how much time I have. And different types of videos take different types of editing. And having done some professional work in video production, I'm fairly decent at, making a template for a style of video and saying, okay, I shoot this much interview footage, this much B-roll, and then I kind of put that together in about, 2 to 4 hours worth of time. And also I have breaks when I'm at school too. There are some days where I have like a 3-hour break in between my classes and I'm not tutoring or teaching during that time. So it's like I have some time where I can carve that out and just focus and do that. So definitely I have very little free time right now. And so it takes some effort to do that. And that's one of the reasons why I'm still debating this. And I'm starting to shoot some stuff for this new channel, but I haven't actually published anything because I really want to make certain that it's a good idea. Because the other thing that crosses my mind is I could just say the hell with YouTube, do a video on here every now and then, do some live streams to check in with everybody and just really put more of my time and effort just into enjoying myself and doing stuff. And just kind of give up on the dream of YouTube stardom. Not to say that stardom is really my dream, but just there is a certain, being honest, like when you put hours and hours of your time into making content, like you want people to see it. You're proud of and invested in the things that you're saying to people, and that you want that conversation to reach more people. And there's a certain extent to which if it's not reaching people, then what's the point? you know, you could just spend more time enjoying and being immersed in the experience. And especially I look at that with my daughter. You know, with like how much more of a good time could I have with her? Just like, you know, just taking pictures for my own fun. But then it's like, okay, what do I do with those? Not saying what do I do with those pictures, like it's not good enough for me to have those pictures, but like I really love sharing the pictures that I have. And I really love the idea that, you know, putting that stuff out there could help another person who maybe feels like that's something that they want to do, but they don't know where to start, or they feel like they should be doing, or maybe they are already doing it and they feel kind of alone because they don't know anybody else who's doing that kind of stuff. You know, it's like there's a lot of really cool benefits that come from connecting, and just like you guys that are here on this live stream, you know, like my live stream crew, you guys are people I consider friends. I don't think I've met any of you in person at this point, although someday when I'm done with nursing school and I'm done paying off cameras, maybe I'll be able to, like, you know, do some meetups. That would be really cool. But that's been something that's had a huge impact on my life. It's been really beneficial. So yeah, you know, that like there's a lot of different temptations in here, a lot of different things that look really good, but I can't do all of them all at the same time. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question there, Lewis, but that's kind of what I'm thinking. Um, Maddie Anderson says, I've been to many national parks from the time I was 2 until now, and I've found such peace in the outdoors. It's wonderful that you want to share that. Thank you. Yeah, I think there's a lot of value there, and one of the things is that for me, you know, um, I've had to kind of redefine my place in outdoor recreation. You know, since I've been kind of limited. Really, I mean, it kind of goes back to Lewis's question. I haven't had the time to travel and climb and shoot projects the way that I want to. So it's like, okay, what can I find within a half an hour of my house that is appropriate for me to do, that's outdoors, that has enough interest and like physical value, but that it's also appropriate to bring, you know, a 3 or 4 year old along. And so that's presented me with some really interesting challenges. And I feel like every time I've encountered challenges, sharing some of those challenges has always allowed me to reach other people, because so much of what brings people, you know, to different videos on YouTube really is dealing with challenges, things that they're, you know, that we're trying to figure out. We want to find somebody who might be either sharing that same challenge, who can empathize, or somebody who's figured out a way to build a better mousetrap, who has a solution, or somewhere in between those two. So that's kind of some of my thought process. Peter Kent says, I think you're best at community interaction. Do more live shows about monthly photo challenges, maybe a book club, new gear, thoughts, maybe one edited video a month. That's what I like about the, I'm assuming channel is what you meant to say there. You could make this the live channel and the other channel for edited video content. Ooh, there's a good idea. That's a very interesting idea. I hadn't thought of doing that, because I definitely have, you know, I still have many documentary projects that I'm interested in doing that are not strictly outdoor focused. You know, like I have the documentary story about, you know, logging with my brother and his little operation there. My dad's story, which is like a family history documentary, which is interesting, but it's definitely not outdoor focused. And I have, you know, some other things. So it's like having a little bit of variety there in between the different channels could be a good thing. Or, you know, I could just kind of do it all here too on one channel, and just say, yeah, this is kind of my channel where I do my thing, and I do a variety of different things, so people can kind of, you know, take what they want and leave the rest, you know, kind of buffet style. Yeah, living vertical for the live part of the show. Yeah, and I love doing, I do love doing live streams. You know, live streams are probably my favorite thing to do, just because the interaction is it's way more fun. You know, I mean, I like the comments and the videos and stuff too, but interacting with people, you know, in a more realistic fashion, that's a lot more preferable. That's preferable. I'm trying to get my syntax right there. Obviously, I'm not taking English classes this semester. So, yeah, that's one of the things. Well, these are a lot of the different ingredients. So I appreciate the support. Thank you, Rika. I do have a groovy family, and right now, we're a little bit fragmented with my having to be out in New York. So I'm separate from my family for school because I'm going to school here in New York. They're in Massachusetts, so we visit on the weekends and all the back and forth. You probably remember that from the live streams in the closet and kind of the back and forth to the studio. So it's like that's all part of the deal. Um, and then sometimes, I know that there's definitely strength in kind of bifurcating different channels that have different topics, but then at the same time, there's also a certain amount of one that relates to the other. My um, my outdoor stuff is really, has a big impact on my photography, and my photography and my desire to document things has a sort of big impact on my outdoor stuff too. So the nonfiction book club. Let me see if I can dig into that. Or is that something that you are going to start, Rika, or were you suggesting that I start a nonfiction book club? Um, because I think there could be some interesting stuff around that certainly. Although, yeah, I haven't. I've never thought about doing anything of that nature. Let's see here. Yeah, now that it's like I feel like since whatever came over me with gear acquisition syndrome over the last several years, it's just kind of passed. Like I saw the XH1, and I just my gas pains have dissipated. Like I saw the XH1, I saw the beautiful photos, and I was just like, for the first, and I don't know why. I literally have no idea why. I was just like, that looks cool. Like I'm happy for the people that I see getting it, but I have no interest in getting it. I don't really care to talk about it even. I mean, I would, gladly answer questions, give my opinion about it if somebody asked me, but I don't have any, of my own volition. I'm not going to go out there and be like, hey, here's what I think about the Fuji XH1. Like, um, like, or like buy a copy of it to play with it or something. It's just, okay, I see what you're saying, Rika. That makes sense. So, okay, I thought you were hopefully volunteering me for. I'm just making a pun on your username there, that you were being a hopeful voluntarist and volunteering me for a book club host. Which, I mean, hey, um, I'd be down to do that. I'd love to love to do some stuff. Manuals is a good idea, King Yuzi. I could present camera manuals to folks. Lewis, I will check out Vero. I will have a look at that. Maddie Anderson asks, how did I get started with photography and documentary work? I recently changed my major from nursing to photography. No, now you're going to make me question my decision. And I've been looking for a way to share my pictures. Cool. Well, number one, and I'm don't misunderstand me. I'm going to give you my opinion and experience based on kind of what I have done, and I'm not in any way trying to be a wet blanket. Let's just say. I went from photography into nursing, and again, a lot of this is very, very personal for me, but I went into photography, or I kind of stumbled into photography, first of all, by accident. So I started off working in camps and working as a mountain guide, and did a little search and rescue, and I also was a teacher. So I had a variety of different things where I had a variety of like small part-time jobs that enabled me to spend a lot of time outside, a lot of time traveling and climbing. And so that's what I would do. I would take 6 months off at a clip. It was just me at the time, and when my wife and I first got married, obviously just the two of us. We could live very cheap, and we didn't own any property. We didn't. I mean, we still don't own any property, and I certainly own far fewer cameras at that point. So that my financial overhead was very low. And basically, I worked half-time jobs during one half of the year and then traveled during the other half of the year. And it was a dream come true. honestly, for a large part of my 20s and even into my very early 30s. What happened along that route is, I definitely found some ways to make enough of a living to get by and to continue doing the stuff that I loved. And in the process of being out there, you would need to take rest days. And so I always, as a writer, I went to school for writing, and so creative stuff was sort of in my background a little bit, and I was blogging. And so the blogging, and my wife would take pictures, and then I'd publish her photos, and then I would write a little description of where we were, where we'd been for the last few days, what we were doing, kind of what we saw, who we met. And that's kind of what got me into it. And then I kind of got bored with the writing, and so I started picking up the camera, and it really intrigued me that you could make pictures that were interesting out of things that were not that interesting, that you could, kind of take something boring and make it interesting just by composition. And that really interested me because I had never understood that before. And so once I started doing that, it became something that I would always bring along with me, because I figured, well, I'm in interesting places, and if I can learn how to compose interesting pictures in interesting places, I mean, man, I'm shooting fish in a barrel. Like, I have a huge advantage. And this was around the time, this was way before Instagram started. This was or got popular to any extent. This was like 2008, 2009. And basically, kind of mid-20s, this was all well and good. And then, my wife and I got married, and it was like, okay, we should start building a life and kind of start being, a little bit more responsible somewhere. And we got this idea to, that I would do a project, because this was kind of a lot of it came from looking at reality TV. And we were like, how come nobody's done any kind of reality TV, sorry, can't speak, reality TV about climbing or adventure type stuff. And I was like, yeah, and I've never seen anybody with type 1 diabetes, because I've had that for, well, at the time, 13 years I'd had it, now 20 years. And I was like, it'd be cool if we could do something that kind of plays on a reality TV-ish angle, self-produce and publish it ourselves, make movies, make little episodes, and make a documentary out of it. We'll teach ourselves how to do all this stuff, and it'll be a good excuse to, live on the road, but put some sort of a purpose or a cause behind it. And then also, hopefully that may intersect with some commercial opportunities along the way. And to make a long story excruciating, it did. I wound up having the opportunity to be a spokesperson for a medical device manufacturing company, and it was like, there's money coming in, and it was like, people, hey, can you, be a keynote speaker at this event? And people pay me money to stand and talk to people. Like, are you kidding me? I would make in a weekend enough to support us for a year, and it was just mind blowing. And then the problem is, with something like that, it's kind of easy come, easy go, because in order to kind of be relevant or to be hot for a short period of time, all you have to do is just do something different. And for whatever reason, I was in the right place at the right time, and I had different stuff that just hadn't been, the rest of the industry hadn't caught up with. And so, 2 or 3 years of that were good, and then it just kind of started to go downwards. And the whole keynote speakers and making lots of money and being wined and dined by various industries just didn't really happen. And I learned that I was really bad at promoting myself. So when I wasn't kind of exceptional enough to just catch people's attention and have them come to me, I was really bad at going out and getting them. And I tried a few times to get agents and to get representation, get somebody who would do that for me, always with disastrous effects. And maybe it was luck, maybe, who knows. But that's what I was doing. And so I said, okay, I'm at a point where I know I have skill now as a photographer and video editor, filmmaker. I've done a lot of that stuff because just kind of living the dream, as you might say, and doing adventure photography, filmmaking, and building my brand, it got me a lot of experience and kind of put me at a point of being reasonably proficient. And so I went out and started to say, okay, how can I now market myself? I was like, I guess I'm a photographer now. That's the only skill that I have that's inherently marketable, because writing in English, if you're not teaching as a professor, either you're writing your own blog, selling your own self and your own shtick, or, nobody pays anything for blogging. Or you're making clickbait websites to, drive ad traffic. So it's kind of all right, well, next best thing, what do I have? I have photography and filmmaking. I can kind of do something with that. And then kind of once I started to really learn that now this was a different type of photography and filmmaking, because I was having to really market myself as a skill that I was offering or a service, rather than market myself as a personality or a brand. And like, when people desire you as a personality or brand, that makes everything else much easier. But when you have to actually say, here's a service, people want very concrete things, and you have to be good at marketing. And I am not. I'm just not. And I tried. Like, I spent a lot of time working on it, and it didn't come together for me. And I think there may be a certain extent to which I just hated the marketing so well, that so much that it was hard for me to do a good job at it. And so I went the opposite way after a few years of doing that, and just kind of crashed and burned and turned financially, and had to bail on photography. And I said, and again, somewhere in there, the point where it really became painfully clear that photography was not working for me was when my daughter was born, and it was like, okay, we have to kind of get our act together and settle down a little bit. And I say have to, meaning that, we spent a year living in a trailer with my daughter when she was slightly older than an infant. And the whole like, oh, we can still do everything that we want to do, and we don't have to change our life, yes and no. That was my mindset going into it. But I found that with photography and with all that stuff, there's definitely a component to it that goes well beyond the photography, and that most of photography and making a living at photography is marketing, and building relationships with clients, and convincing people that they should buy your service instead of saving a nickel and having Uncle Bob do it with his iPhone. And I know that it's, very, Jason Lanier and all these other people say, just buy really fancy lenses that have like great bokeh, and then you can show them why you can do stuff that Uncle Bob can't do even with his iPhone X, which has, all the portrait mode and all that stuff. And I think that that's really out of touch, and I think that is disingenuous and dangerous advice to give people that are coming up as photographers and filmmakers. It's hard work, and way more people with way more talent than I have done way worse than I have. So, and I mean, like, I had a chance to kind of get my foot in the door and kind of get a little off the ground and kind of get a look at the landscape before I kind of was like, crash and burn. But there are many people who just kind of started slightly at the wrong time, or in slightly the wrong niche, and got off on slightly the wrong foot, and they're way more talented, way better content than I have. And I mean, even now, like, I look at Instagram, I have 10,000 and change followers on Instagram. That number has been constant because, like, people follow and unfollow because everybody's trying to beat the algorithm, right? I happen to get into Instagram at a time when things were good, and it enabled me to get some visibility, and that was great. But if I were to be like, hey, I can tell you how you can get your 10,000 followers, like, just take my webinar. I could tell people all the stuff that worked for me a year ago or a year and a half ago, when I happened to be in the right spot at the right time, and it would be a complete waste of time and money for everybody else. So I guess the long and short of it is that I went back to nursing, because at the end of the day, photography is a skill that I'm always going to have, but unless I want to be a marketer, see, if you're good at marketing, it doesn't matter what you're marketing. You can market pretty much any product or service. If you got the marketing part down, then you will probably do really well making a living for yourself in photography. If you don't have the marketing part down, and you just love photography, then you'd be much better served, in my opinion, to find a job that gives you free time to go be a photographer. Because people who are professional photographers, the professional part happens because most of what they do is marketing. So that's why I went back to nursing school, because all the people that I know who are nurses, they want to do something that is in demand, that's like a trade in a lot of ways, enables them to work on their feet, be physically active, do some tangible good, help other people, and with job security, job portability, all that other stuff. And those are all things that appeal to me. And at the end of the day, I love photography, but I was starting to hate photography because it it became this albatross around my neck where it was dragging my family life down and my ability to provide a home where I could actually give my daughter the things that I was photographing, where I could give her those experiences. I couldn't provide those experiences for her because we were just completely broke. And now, obviously, like I'm having to dig out of that hole, and that's what I'm going to be doing for the next, I kind of started digging out of that hole this past summer, and I'm going to be in this hole digging away with my shovel for the next 2 years. So all that to say, not trying to discourage anybody from going into photography professionally, just saying, understand that you have to pull the ripcord when it's time to pull the ripcord, and recognize what you got into it for so that you can recognize when it's time to get out. Because as long as you get your in points and your out points, right, it's just like buying and selling stocks. As long as you know, okay, this is the price I'm buying for, when it hits this price point, I'm out. I'm not going to wait for it to go $10 higher and then say, oh hell, maybe it'll go even another $5 up, and then it crashes down, down to 0 or down to 2 or 3, and then you lose all that you put in. You have to know what your in point is, know what your out point is, so you can get what you want and be prepared for your life to change. The other thing I would say, and at the risk of being paternal, I'm just going to say it, I could have done everything that I have done with photography. I could have done all of it if I had gotten a nursing degree. I could have put that degree on ice, because I got a 4-year degree from a state school, and then English and philosophy degree. The philosophy companies weren't hiring, so I went into teaching, and I went into climbing and guiding and doing all that other stuff. But like, I could have done all that with a nursing degree. I could have spent my 4 years studying something that kicked my rear end, and done that for 4 years, gotten a nursing degree that I could put in my pocket with my certification, go down the road and do travel nursing 6 months out of the year, and then actually still be able to have a paycheck doing 6 months of work as a travel nurse, and still be able to support my family, and have like a fancy trailer where I could afford to stay in campgrounds type of things. So that's kind of the trajectory that I look at. So I would caution, to me, the idea of changing majors from nursing to photography, and you may have a different plan, you may have a different pathway that makes more sense than for you, but I would say it's like you want to build a commercial or a career foundation for yourself, and you want the most stable part of that foundation at the bottom. And the truth is, everybody is going to need medical care at some point in their life. Everybody. When you come into the world, when you exit the world, certainly, and then probably at least several points in between. You're never going to have to explain to somebody why they need a nurse. But when you're a photographer, you have 50 other people who can, people want the cheapest care that they can possibly, or the cheapest service they can get with photography. But when you're in a hospital, everybody wants the best. And that's somewhere that you can go and you can establish yourself, and you can still have all the dreams that you want to have. But at least you have the security of knowing that you have a guaranteed way to provide for yourself, and to provide for any eventualities, family and all that stuff, if that, comes into view for you. Because it's really, I tell my students now that I'm teaching, I tell them, because there's a lot of, students that I see coming through at a community college where I'm teaching, because I'm teaching classes at the community college that I don't need a master's degree to teach. Same classes that I taught right after I was at a college. First aid and safety, CPR, emergency response classes. And I tell them, because there's a lot of kids I get in these classes that are not super motivated, that are just kind of like dragging ass every time they come in. They're just like, oh, why do I have to be here? They need one more credit to stay full time for their insurance, their medical insurance. And so that's why they're here. And I tell them, I say, look, guys, as much as you think this sucks now, if you have to do this again when you're 30 and you have a family and you want to move on with your life, and you feel like a failure because now you have a kid that you can't support because you didn't get it right the first time, as bad as you think it is now, it's way worse when you have to do it when you're 35. Way worse. Way, way worse. So it's worth it to take it on the chin and do the hard stuff up front. So that's just a little bit of paternal ranting for me. Maddie Anderson says, thank you so much. You're very, very welcome. And thank you for listening and being patient with my unsolicited advice, I guess. I'm also minoring in geology, and I might get my CNA this summer. Yeah, the other thing too, Maddie, and I would assume that you may have already done this, but like if you spend a little time on Reddit, like the nursing subreddits and just like a few different places and really try to, chat with other people, because one of the things that I've found just being out on the road a lot, most of the people who were out there with me on the road, they were either programmers of some sort or they were nurses. Almost all the time when you would see people dirtbagging, it was those were their jobs, because those are the two most portable, easily attainable lines of work. And definitely programmers were even more than nurses. But some of the nurses that I've bumped into out there, it's like, it's basically all the stuff that I realized too late and that I just shared here with you. Um, and photography wasn't their dream. But the other thing too is like, with all of the resources that we have here on YouTube, and I'm not necessarily counting my channel as a resource to learn photography, but there's a huge amount. Like if you just watch some of the stuff that's on here, it's even like with music. Like I started actually got into playing the guitar, and I've been watching a lot of videos by virtuoso guitarists like Steve Vai and Joe Satriani and stuff like that. And these are, they talk about how many guitarists that they know that are, on what they consider their peers, who are like professional household names in terms of guitarists, who never took any lessons, and some of them can't even read music. Like they just know how to play. And I think there, with anything creative, there is definitely the desire for security and secure income with a creative field. And a lot of times we feel that if we get education, like formal education, in a creative field, that is going to guarantee us the economic stability that's going to come from having that. And there is an extent to which that does, because you make connections in school, and the connections are where you get the jobs from. It's a lot less about your price and your talent than it is about like who you know. If you know somebody who can put in a good word for you, who can vouch for you, who can introduce you to the person who makes a decision, and you have a chance to shake somebody's hand and say, hey, hand them my portfolio and say, here's my work, this is what I do, it's great to meet you, how can I help you, you have a much better shot than even the most talented photographer who's just a resume in a stack of papers. And so there is that benefit to getting a formal education in creative fields. But a lot of times I think people feel like their creative their education, their formal education, is going to somehow inoculate them from having to fail miserably because the market is so competitive. And the first things to suffer when the market is competitive are the things that people can do without, like photographs, or I shouldn't say that people can do without photographs, but they, you know, yeah, they can do it without hiring somebody to do photographs, is what I mean. So let's see. I think I've seen some robust conversation in here. If you left me a question up above or anything like that and I missed it, just drop it again because I kind of missed it. I can't sort through everything. Tomislav, much harder at 35, try it at 50. Yeah, I hear you. And there's, to be fair, there's definitely some people in my classes that are like, mid, late 50s that are getting after it. They're going back and getting their degree, but it's like, it doesn't get easier. And this is the thing that, I want to focus on in my outdoor channel, honestly. And I'm not being facetious, this is the thing that I'm seeing in my pursuit of nursing, is the idea that if we can get away from challenges, that somehow we're going to have a better life, is the exact opposite of what kids need to understand growing up. They need to understand, you need to find the things that are the most challenging and worthwhile challenges, not just like beating your head against the wall because the wall is hard, but like to find worthwhile challenges and attack them with a vengeance rather than running. Because if you're afraid of doing something, 9 times out of 10, it means that you need to do something related to that. You need to take a second look. There's a lesson in there for you somewhere. And, I'm glad that I figured that out before I got any older, but I still do wish that I figured that out when I was younger. Because, like I said, I could have done all the photography and filmmaking with a nursing degree rather than a worthless English degree, because I was already good at writing. So I didn't need a degree, for that. So, Peter Kent says, I feel like it would be easier for me to do it at 35 than it was at 18. You know, you may have a point there, because on some level, I think there's a depth in perspective and understanding of the world that I have that a lot of my, the fellow students maybe don't see. Because, like, a lot of, like, for example, we had this quiz last week where we're memorizing bones in the body, and we had to memorize like all the bones in like the head and the skull and the face and the different processes and the fossa and the, like all the different foramen and the little you know intricacies and cavities or whatnot in the skull and the facial bones. And everybody thinks that's really hard, and the complaining and just like, oh my goodness, I can't do this and blah blah blah. I'm just like, I mean, to me it doesn't feel hard, not because it's not difficult, but because like I'm used to things being pretty difficult and I'm okay with it. It's like, knowing that I can do something difficult that's actually going to benefit me. It's like, this is going to be difficult, but when I get 100 on this quiz, this is going to put me in a better position, and etc. Like this is gonna make my life tangibly better for having embraced this challenge. So I don't look at that as a hard thing. It's like, well, I'm paying money to be here. Why would I want to like get shortchanged? Why would I want to have an easy assignment? It's not like gratuitously difficult. It's just, and that's a part of the deal. That's what you're paying for, to get this information in your head. And I think that perspective is one that I don't know if I could have completely embraced and really wrapped my head around when I first started in school. And so to a certain extent, I think maybe, yeah, you might be right, Peter. We might just kind of follow the paths we're supposed to follow, and whatever happens, happens, Yes, I played Counter-Strike all the time too when I was 18. Yeah. And I think that's one, valid argument for even saying, why they should maybe defer the time that kids spend, between high school and college. I've had some strongly worded arguments with various people, like in my family. Like my sister always wanted me to talk to her daughter and kind of, be a good influence on her, and like, tell her to straighten up, and, just to kind of check in with her and be, a good influence, kind of a mentor to her. Cause like she thinks I'm cool because like I'm older than she is, but still younger than her mom. And so it's like, you can talk to her, like, tell her not to go take that, those 2 years to go, traveling between now and college when she graduated high school. And I was like, I don't know if I can honestly tell her that, because I feel like a lot of the decisions that I made, if I had taken a little bit more time, I probably would have been able to, measure twice and cut once, instead of doing things the way that I did, which was, not bad, but at the same time, could be useful. And yeah, Tomislav, I think that's definitely an interesting point about the draft. I think that forcing people to get out there and be of service is a big part of it too, because there's an extent to which, traveling is all well and good, but a lot of the value that I think comes from traveling is when you see people that are less fortunate than yourself, and you see a different perspective on things. And also the idea of being of service and learning how to be useful, I think is beneficial. And I think there's an extent to which a lot of the, the traveling and joyriding that gets done, it can be done in a, very superficial way, without really giving somebody the benefit of having gone out there and like or dislike the Mormon Church. I think this is something that they do really well as well, which is, the mission trips where, kids have to go for, I don't know how long it is, but I think it's at least a year, and they go down to some, area, and they have to, practice, witnessing and kind of preaching the Mormon gospel to people. And then they also have to be of service to other people, and they're like doing things to help, and they're serving somebody else, which is a real important thing, but yeah, so there's there's definitely arguments for and against the draft. That's just as I see Peter bringing up some reasonable points, that you don't want people there who don't want to be there, because then you wind up with people who can't do the job, and wind up taking away from other people who want to do the job, right? So there's there's that. So yeah, Christopher, well, maybe there's a way that I can, I don't know. That's kind of what I'm thinking about too. Is if some of my rantings on these channels, I can find a way to reach people, you know, and do that to bring to bring to bring a little different perspective into things. Because there's, you know, you can find a dime a dozen forced internship. I think that's a good thing, or like some sort of Peace Corps, even if it's not something that's like strictly military service, but some sort of public service, something that people can, I mean, hell, even if it's going out and like taking a trash bag and cleaning up crap alongside the road on the weekends or a few days out of the week, like that's something that, you know, makes you think differently about flinging that soda bottle out your window or your cigarette butt or what have you. You know, like when you have to go out there and you clean stuff up, it's like it makes you think differently about stuff. Like there's always something that we can be doing. And then, you know, those same people are the same ones that are going to go out and be like, yeah, we need to vote for, you know, this bill and that bill to ban this kind of thing and that kind of thing, all this regulation and stuff. But at the same time, very simple things like, hey, why don't you just spend a day out of every, you know, month, go out with the trash bag and like, you know, pick up crap alongside the road, you know, a mile in either direction from your house. Make the world a better place just like that. You know, and I think that there's a lot of different ways we can do that. But for me, anyways, a lot of that started with just being outdoors, and understanding that whatever you have, that you have to work for it. You know, even when you know, when when I was a little kid, and I thought when I started fishing with my dad, and this is going to be a video that I would definitely do on my new channel. But like we went fishing the first time, and it was like I saw all these pictures and we watched all these videos back. Like we went to the public library and we rented VHS cassettes about like fishing. And I mean, I was just ready to go out there because I mean, these guys, they would just stand out there in their cool hats and their sunglasses, and they would just like, you know, 1, 2, 3 every third cast, like boom, oh wow, we got this fish, and like pull them in. And so like I got out there and I started fishing, and I was like, okay, here I am. And like first thing I do is I fall in the water and get like stuck, and I'm like in the middle of the stream and I can't get out because the current's too fast, and I'm like up to my waist and I'm like flailing around, and then I fall down again, and like my tackle box with all the fishing lures that I just bought the night before go like floating down the river. And you know, eventually I kind of got out of there, got back to shore. I'm wet, I'm humiliated, no fish obviously to show for myself, and like, you know, half of the fishing equipment that I was so excited to have just like bought with my allowance like the day before for our big first fishing trip was like, you know, somewhere off sailing towards the Atlantic Ocean, polluting the environment. Even at a young age I was, but it occurred to me in that moment, and many moments since then, it's like, wow, you know, if I was actually relying on this to eat, my life would really suck. My life would be really, really hard. And in some way, like that concept, even though it didn't form in that articulate a fashion in my head as a you know 11-year-old, but I remember kind of having an inkling of that, and at many other times since then when I've been out hiking and doing various things outdoors. And I think there's an interesting subtlety to that lesson when it's not your parents saying, hey, well, we're serving kids in China, right? It's like you falling on your face in the river, and the river like beating you over the head and taking your stuff from you, and then kind of spitting you up on the bank and being like, okay, how would you like this if you know, it's kind of like it's a little more subtle because it's not your parent delivering the lesson, it's nature delivering the lesson. I think that's a really cool thing. It's harder to dodge it. So let's see. We got a lot of good, interesting concepts in here. Peter says, I say first 2 years of college should be low-level job experience in various fields. Even those that think they know what they want to do after high school tend to find something else along the way. I think that's a great point. And you know, in a lot of ways too, you know, in a similar way that like you have to, like in nursing or in most medical professions, you have to do some sort of clinical rotation. I think there should be more focus on that, and I think that's kind of what you're getting at as well there, Peter. Like, you know, having some sort of a clinical rotation where you're working in the environment that you are interested in that you're studying it towards, even if, you know, even if it's not as full, because most of the time students don't get those internships until the last 2 years, or if that, it's after they graduate that they get those, and it's like, hey, you've already spent the money, you bought the ticket, haha, now you get to take the ride, and you have to do it without getting paid, or getting paid very much, because you're just an intern. And then by the time you figure out that, oh yeah, I guess I don't really like this, that, or the other thing, then it's a little bit too late for you to make a decision and to course correct. And having some sort of, you know, better thought out process that says, okay, like if you want to go into this or this, and maybe not even exact categories, like say, like, oh, if you want to program this type of video game, but it's like, okay, maybe if you know that you want to do something in visual arts, whether that be like graphic design, video editing, photography, filmmaking, anything in that vein, it's like, okay, we have a pipeline in this program where you're going to start out for your first 2 years, and then you can pick from all these different disciplines that seem like they're the closest to what you want to do. And then just the experience that you'll get from that with meeting and talking to other people. That's why now when my students ask me about everything, I send them to Reddit, because it's like, you want to know about, how to do claymation, you want to know about a ketogenic diet, you want to know whether you should be a photographer or a nurse, like, go to Reddit and talk to the 50,000 people that are on each one of these Reddits that do these things, that can tell you everything that sucks and everything that's wonderful about these professions, and give you an idea of what you should expect. And then you can kind of take the good and the bad and put that somewhere in the middle and say that's probably what you'll expect to experience most of the time. But right now it's just, we throw these kids to the wolves and they have no idea what they're doing in school, so yeah, that got serious pretty quick. King Uzi says, I'm 29 and I'm still not sure about the direction I'm going. I've done a bit of everything media related and I love it all. Well, if you love it all, that's a good thing. That is certainly very useful. I think the key is really, if you have experience in that stuff, probably the biggest thing holding you back, and I could be totally wrong about this, but I would guess, is relationships, right? Like, because if you're good at doing these different things, it's hard to make relationships and to make choices. And that's part of the thing with relationships. I mean professional relationships, like, if you know clearly what you want to do and you can say, this is where I want to focus on, you can go towards that industry and people in that industry, and make connections and get your foot in the door, so that you can get an opportunity to meet with the people who make the decisions, and then hopefully actually be able to secure some sort of a position there. And I've seen your work, and the work that I've seen of yours, King Uzi, is really fantastic. There's no reason why you can't be very successful in that. I think the trick is just trying to figure out, either, like Peter just said, to run your own company and what is involved in that, or to figure out how to get your foot in the door and how to forego some of the creative decision making, so that you can have the security and the relative ease of being in someone else's company, where they have to call the shots and you just do the work, which is nice because you don't have to do all the stuff. You don't have to do all the unpleasant stuff that goes with running a business, which is really unpleasant. And but then you have to also give up the creative control that you have when you run the business too. And so that's something that I struggle with. I struggle with both. And I thought that both, when I tried them individually, I thought that each one of those would be the answer. And then I learned that no, it's hard to run a business. And also when I tried, working for somebody else, I also learned, it's hard to work for somebody else too. So, and it's hard going back to school, and it's hard being a nurse. So what are you going to do, right? It's going to be hard no matter what. But I've learned at least which type of hard that I dislike the most, and I dislike having to sell myself the most. So anyways, guys, this has been an interesting live stream. We're a little bit over an hour right now. If anybody else has any questions, comments, thoughts, I would love to kind of start winding things down here a little bit. King Uzi says, I'm too like doing favors for people. I'm too nice. You're too easy. Oh boy. Okay. Well, yeah, that's one of the hardest things in business. I talk to my friend about this all the time. He has a construction business, and when he's thinking about everything, he's not thinking with nearly the amount of, I guess, aggression that you need to think of. Because when you're a business owner, you need to be aggressively like fighting for the survival of your business at all times, because you literally are doing that. And if you're not getting enough of a margin to make a profit and to pay for your gear and to pay for everything else, it's like you put yourself in the position of the person who's bearing the cost, and you say, oh man, what would I want to pay if I were them? And then you give them the price that you think they want, or you are too accommodating of people, and they give you a bunch of, they say, oh, I want you to make me a 5-minute video, and that's not like, oh, a 5-minute video of me talking. It's like, oh, they also want drone shots and B-roll and like all this other crazy stuff over top of it, and like special effects, and oh, and then by the way, could we throw this in, then could you throw that in, could you cut some stuff down for Facebook video, because they're a little different, some Instagram shorts, and then before you know it, you're like, yeah, okay, I want to make it a nice deal for them, so you say yes, and then you wind up, it can be really hard not to do that, and then you price yourself out of business. So you have to figure out that price point where you're getting about 50 to 60% of the jobs that you're looking for, that you're asking for, and then that you're not getting all the jobs that you're asking for, because if you're getting too many, then that means your prices are probably too low, and you're not going to be able to sustain your level of you're not going to be able to sustain the level of output that you need. The added bits, and that's the thing, like what I would typically do is, and I'd be interested to hear different things that everybody else might have ideas on this, but what I would do when I did that kind of stuff is I would make kind of the simplest iteration of what my client is describing to me. I would say, I estimate this amount of time, and so for a flat rate, I give you a flat rate for this amount of time plus like 2 revisions for free. Anything beyond that, if it goes significantly beyond the X amount of time that I'm quoting my flat rate on, I have an overage of X amount of dollars per hour. And then I imagine to myself, what's the most hateful iteration of this that I can think of, and kind of use that to guide that pricing, and say, okay, like, what is this going to cost? Because it's like, you don't necessarily have the same prices for everything. It's not like an hour of my time editing is necessarily going to be priced the same as an hour of my time shooting or recording audio, because those things are just different levels of effort and equipment and stuff like that. So I like to make sure to always have a little bit of wiggle room for that, so that they don't get too carried away with bolting on extra features, because, oh, we got the flat price for this product, and this product also includes this and that and the other thing, and we got to tack this on and bolt that on and secure a little something else, and before you know it, it's like you got just a bunch of stuff dragging off the back end of the project. But to be able to have that overage time that you put in, like, people feel good about having a flat rate because they don't feel like they're under the gun, that they feel like they have some flexibility with the revisions and stuff and some time framing. But at the same time, there's also a limited amount that they can take advantage of that, so that they don't have complete free reign to just go nuts and take advantage of you. And it kind of keeps everybody honest, because they want to stay within the time frame, and you want to get paid extra if you're going to be doing extra work. So that way it kind of balances itself out, because it's really hard. And I've done this so many times, just way too many times, where I quote them a price that's too low, and they're like, okay. And then I'm like, wait a minute. Well, okay, so hang on a second. I actually need to get like double that, because I just realized that the reason you said yes like that is because I quoted a price that was like, 40% too low, because I didn't actually budget in all the rest of the stuff that I need to stay in business. And it's just like, by that point, yeah, it's water under the bridge, and you have to eat it. And that's a big problem. That happens very, very easy. The other thing too is, like, when you like somebody or you want to get a job, you want to give them an estimate. And I've found that the longer you can defer giving an estimate and say, look, I want to like meet with them in person, start planning the project, and even say, look, like, I'll give you a free audit of the project or something like that, to couch it in grandiose terms that makes it feel like you're not just like holding them off until you can figure out, so that you can get your act together. But basically say, look, let's meet, let's talk about this. Don't throw any numbers around. Be very, very judicious about throwing out numbers, and really count all the costs and start to flip over some of those rocks and dig into some of the planning before you really start giving numbers, because you want to be able to give a number, get into account all the possibilities of how this project could mutate into something else, and you don't want that to happen once you've already given a quote for something too low. And even if you're 100% justified in saying, okay, this is something different than what we talked about, it still looks kind of bad. To show them your professionalism and that you have value at doing more than just like turning wrenches. Like, you're not just a technician, you're also somebody who understands the landscape, and you're a consultant who wants to really help understand and get on board with the idea of what they're trying to create, and then do extra work there before you start talking about the numbers. And then that way, because it always looks bad if you have to go and ask for more or something like that, even if you're totally justified in asking for more. Maybe the project really does change its shape, but if you can wait to give them a quote until you've kind of been through some of those false starts, then you're in a better position, I think, to be able to say, okay, this is kind of what we're looking at. And you can also go back home and think about it from a worst case scenario and say, okay, what if this person turns into a complete pain in my ass? Excuse me. What if, this, and what if that? And like, you think about all the things that you could possibly encounter that would make you hate this job. And then say, okay, how much would they need to make me, to pay me to make that job worth my while? And that's the number that you give them. And most of the time, that's going to be pretty darn close to what, and again, that's not the most scientific way of doing it, because obviously you have to figure out costs that you have and everything like that. But it needs to be worth it to you to do the job, even if you hate everything about it. And, some people compete on price, and some people compete on quality and service. And I think that if you have a good way with clients, and you're good at the consulting part, and you're good at the implementation, the strategizing, that's definitely added value you can throw in there. Now Peter said doing a job for free or cheap is kind of like burning a client. It's unlikely that the client will be okay paying more the next time, so do it, then use the work to advertise or get new paid clients. So and this is not I've heard this somewhere else, but what I have used as a rule of thumb for work when somebody doesn't want to pay, I will do free work, or I will do work for full price. I will not do work for cheap. So the idea is that if I'm going to do work for free for somebody, it's going to be free with a connection to another project. So it's like, look, because I really value this relationship and I believe in your company and what you're doing, what I would like to do, I would like to offer you this first installment, because I know my work is good enough, and I know I can make work for you that is going to be a good enough fit with your mission that you are going to want more of this work. And so in order to facilitate that, I'm going to, put out my end if you'll be willing to give me a contract for X amount for the next installment of whatever you're doing. And then it's like, okay, you're not devaluing yourself. You're showing that you can use your free work as a strategy, and that you're a good business person as well. Because free work is bad if it's devaluing your work. If free work is saying, look, I'm giving you a sample of this work to be put towards something else that is not at all free, that's full price, because I know that my work is so good and that my services are top notch, that I'm confident offering my work for free as part of that package, because you're going to want more, basically. And I think that could be a good way to use free work. But the idea of somebody wheedling you down and doing, like the I guess the European fruit market, where you're arguing about 5 cents off of a pound of grapes type of thing. You don't want to get into that kind of a situation, because then you're devaluing your work, where they get to set the price. you know. And I think another thing too is recognizing, know your market. So know who you're selling to. Excuse me, like know who you're selling to. And there are some people that just are not the person that they're not your target audience. You know, it's like I told my friend doing construction, he's like, well, this guy, you know, I started off working for these people like 15 years ago, and he's in high school 20 years ago, whatever. And now, you know, these guys have a lot of money, and now he's like a union ironworker. He puts up like skyscrapers in the city in his free time. And so what he does in the side business, it's like home remodeling and like bathrooms and roofs and kitchens and, you know, little plumbing and electrical stuff in there too, but it's like bigger jobs. And he has these people that call him up and are like, oh, I want you to, you know, hammer on a post for a birdhouse. And I'm like, dude, you got to say no to those people. Like, if they don't want to pay, like what they need is they need a high school kid to hammer in a post for them in the ground. They don't need a home contractor to hammer in a post for the ground, because what a home contractor would charge for 2 hours of their time to come over with their tools, with their equipment that all have these overhead costs and hammer in a post, this person does not want to pay that. So they're not your client. What they're looking for is something different than what you're offering. And if you try to argue with them, you're wasting your time, you're wasting their time, and you can do them a much better service by saying, look, you know, here's what I'm offering. This is the type of arrangement that I need to be in. And, you know, maybe even try to find a way to set them up with somebody else that you know who's in a different position who might be a better fit for them. You know, because it's not like you have to insult them or be like, oh, look, like if you're not going to pay me, then screw you. But to just say, look, you know, that's one way to go. Like there are some people that they sell volume at a low price, but to a lot of clients, so they make up the difference that way. What I do is more personalized. It's a little more, you know, tailored. And that's not necessarily what everybody's looking for. So if you're looking for something a little different, maybe I can make some recommendations, something that would, you know, fit your budget a little more. And, you know, maybe they appreciate that you did them a solid. And when their business picks up in a couple of years, maybe they come back and say, oh, yeah, I remember that guy. Like he was, you know, he's good people and, you know, a pleasant person to do business with, because ultimately the talent all matters. But if people don't like you, you know, if you have the opportunity, not that everything is about making people like you, but like respect and likability are two things that go hand in hand, right? You don't want to give your stuff away and lose respect, but you also don't want to, like, you know, die on every hill to get respect and then lose likability completely. And you got to find that, you know, hopefully find that balance there, which is something that I don't know that I ever did, because I think I went back and forth between those extremes. I've had times when I've been like, oh, I want everybody to like me, and so I give my stuff away for free. And then I have times when I'm just like, you know what? I've been like getting ripped off. I look at what other people who I look at and I can demonstrably say they are less capable in like photography skills than I am. And like they're making mistakes as professionals with websites and clients that I made like in my first year of photography, and it looked funny to me then, and I'm looking at them with their clients making these mistakes. I'm like, really? I was like, these people have been ripping me off. I'm gonna like jack up my rates, and if people ask before, I'm gonna, you know, start hooting and hollering and waving my arms, and you know, not that I really did that, but kind of maybe. And so I never really hit that middle ground, that stride. And it's hard when you're marketing yourself like that to really be detached enough to give a good representation of your work, but not be self-inflated, and to also, you know, to really balance that. It's hard to feel like you're being fair to yourself without being overly egotistical, or without feeling like you're not having enough investment in yourself and just being a pushover. And that's kind of like, I just hated always feeling like I was going too far in one direction or the other. And it was just like, you know, there you go. So that's you can take some good strategies from somebody who is really bad at implementing them. And even now, you know, maybe at some point I'll get back into it, but I like talking junk about marketing stuff, but I don't know that I really like actually doing the marketing and having to, you know, do all that. So anyways, this has been really, really good, really interesting. I think I've got some I've enjoyed talking about marketing photography. and good to feel a little useful, because I didn't know that that was book club. Book club on marketing books, huh? Okay, that's something to think about. Yeah, this has helped me make some make some adjustments and ideas, give me something to think about too with my different channels and kind of what I want to do in terms of my business sense. And also, I think there's still a certain element to which a lot of what I just expressed to you about marketing is still stuff that I'm thinking about even with YouTube, because there's certain element. Yeah, and go ahead and ask away while I'm just concluding this little rant here. There's an element to which my decision, like, I'm still at that crossroads of trying to say, how do I value my work? And, am I trying to just make people happy, or am I trying to do the thing that I think is really going to be the most valuable? And there's a balance to it. I mean, on YouTube, it's not the money that I'm getting paid necessarily, but I want to hit that stride and get that balance between having people appreciate my work and still stay connected and maintain the relationship. But I also want to make sure that I'm doing something that really feels right to me. So thank you, Peter. I appreciate that kind words there. I enjoyed that. It was nice getting out and just, I want to do more of those little videos with my daughter and I when we're just out and, just kind of get out and do stuff. So, yeah, King Yuzi, if you like the narrative stuff more than the technical, I think there's definitely, I'm definitely going to be doing more of the narrative stuff here regardless, just because I don't have any more technical stuff really to talk about right now. I have like one more technical video that's just kind of like a shootout I did with my full frame versus the GH5, but it's got a little bit of narrative component. Well, I should say just my daughter being funny in there, but it's nothing as well produced as the last one. But we got a lot of cool stuff. Yeah, that's cool too, Peter. Watching the narrative stuff and then talking about the tech behind it. And that's kind of what I was thinking about doing with the outdoor channel, is that the outdoor channel would be more of my narrative stuff, and then this channel would be kind of talking about the behind the scenes and the narrative, or the technical component that goes into making the narrative stuff when it's relevant. So I think that could be a workable strategy. I just have to kind of wrap my head around that, So yeah, that's an interesting idea. King Yuzi, I might look into that as well, renting some gear and reviewing it that way. It's a cool idea. So, did you have one last question? You said, Yusuf. I don't know whether you had something that you wanted to ask or what. But I'm preparing to draw this live stream to a close here, and it's been fun, as are all of these live streams. I always enjoy them, and I will see you guys next Sunday. And I really enjoy talking shop with you guys. Anybody here who isn't subscribed, make sure you subscribe. But I'm pretty sure the last hateful 8 here that are still straggling along have to be probably subscribed already. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here at this 11th hour. But yeah, thanks for taking the time, guys. I always appreciate the time that you guys take to hang out. And yeah, it's an early morning over there, Tomislav. Glad you were able to make it. Thank you. So yeah, we'll see you guys in the next episode of the Adventure Photo Show. Hopefully I'll have something for you guys this week. Another long live event someday. Yeah, like one of those marathon things where we see how long I can go before like my blood sugar crashes completely and I go into a coma. That would be fun. I'm down for that. So yeah, have a good night, everybody, and we will do this again real soon. I'll have another video out hopefully at some point this week. So thanks, Peter. Thanks, Yusuf, Tomislav, Rika, if you're still here. I don't know who all is still out there. And yeah, thanks for the good questions, guys. We'll see you next weekend. Bye.